God bless America, land that I love.
Florida counts fast. Everyone bases all their insight on what Florida did. And like things are definitely like on the lower end of what Democrats could be doing. But I've talking to people in my own team who are like, what's it mean that this results like this? I'm like, we wrote about this. We wrote about how it was going to take forever to count these absentee ballots.
So you're
so that's kind of happening.
So what? So you should. You're an impartial journalist. I understand that, and I'm going to respect that. I'm not, but you. So if you're giving my audience, who I think largely leans towards the left, should we just take a breath and not be reading much into anything, and just let things play out?
Well, it's weird because Ohio is really interesting. Ohio is the fastest counting state in the Midwest so far, and Biden did much better than Hillary Clinton did. If you look at the places where white working class voters and white voters with college degrees moved away from the Democrats, he did better there. And if you scan that across the Midwest, he's probably in good shape. So if you were hoping for just a total humiliation of the Republican Party and they lose everything, that doesn't seem to be happening. But I don't want to turn into David Cross in the pre-tape call-in show episode of Mr. Show, but it's a bit like that where there's people. We all kind of said in the press, hey, it's going to be weird this year because of how and when people voted and how and when the states count it. Everyone said, all right, and then everyone lost their minds again as soon as the actual start coming in. So Democrats
you can't be disciplined about it because it's too fun and too exciting to be reacting in the moment, and it's probably annoying to keep going. Well, don't forget that there's this process that has to play out. So, all right. I mean, for me, obviously you're right. It sends a much clearer signal if it's this full repudiation of Trump and Trumpism through the general election, where you just say the country has stood up and said we don't agree with the way this guy's been handling things, and here is our voice loud and clear. It doesn't look like that's going to be the case. So, yeah, whatever happens, if Biden wins, there's still going to be a tremendous amount of angst and conflict coming from the other side, where it said, well, he won, but there might have been shenanigans, and he barely lost, and all that kind of stuff.
Come on, man.
Yeah, I mean, that's something people wanted to avoid, and I think that's what's going to happen. So a scenario that looks pretty realistic now is that nothing gets called tonight. Or I'd say the results of the election is not called tonight, but Trump supporters watch TV, and I'm not trying to dismiss them. Everyone watched TV. Liberals freaked out. Trump supporters said we're doing great. The media's wrong again. And as somebody in the press who's been doing this, I do worry about our credibility. It's already going to be hurt because there are people who went, and this is, I always kind of throw under the bus the people who go on cable, and I'm like, I'm seeing 500 electoral votes for Biden. There's going to be supercuts people who got the overall count wrong. And so there, and other predictions were like off base. So that's going to happen. I mean, I think in my case, I wasn't making predictions, but I was more sunny on what happened to Democrats than some people. There's going to be, of the stuff that's counted first, that's what we can write about first. You're going to write about the surprise Republican wins, the not very surprising Democratic wins. And then maybe by Friday, there's clarity on the race. And in the scheme of American history, that's not that long for a very close election. And it's going to be, I mean, Biden's still tracking, cutting Texas to something that we still can't call. That shaves like 800,000 votes off the Republican margin. So Biden's going to win the popular vote again by a big margin. And there's going to be another wave of, oh, come on. Like, how many times we need to go through this where the country doesn't want Donald Trump, and yet the system keeps making it, putting him on the fence. But in terms of the count itself, I think there's some Democrats freaking out, but the math that we were all ready for, it still feels like it's Biden winning, the Hillary map plus the upper Midwest plus possibly Arizona. And Arizona looks pretty good for him at this moment.
He's just won New Hampshire, apparently.
I was going to say, isn't New Hampshire a fairly important state for the map for Biden?
It is. It's also it's a state that that tells you how the suburbs are going, because most of the state is like the Boston suburbs, right? And so I'm pulling up the latest results now. It's a little slow. I wish it was a little faster. But yeah, I mean, he's doing better than Hillary Clinton did by miles with suburban voters. He's doing a little bit worse in northern New Hampshire, where fewer people live. But the numbers he's putting together in New Hampshire make it very hard to imagine him losing a state like Michigan, which has some of the same dynamics, lots of suburbs. I mean, like right now, the count in Michigan, which is heavy on early day, the count in Wisconsin, they have these Republican voters who turned out today, which we knew would happen.
Right.
And the states that have counted faster, it's just hard to see. It's hard to imagine, Delaware County, Ohio, the suburbs of Columbus, voting that much differently than the suburbs of Grand Rapids, Michigan, for example.
Right. So let's talk about Pennsylvania real quick.
Yeah.
There's a lot of votes that are mail-in votes that have not been counted yet, and won't be counted for maybe a few days, or as soon as possible.
So a lot will be counted in the morning. By Friday is basically when the state said it was going to be done. But if you look at what's out, it's pretty clear that it's a ton of Biden votes that are going to come in. I mean, for example, Northampton County, which you're familiar with, that's 2/3 of the vote.
Suburbs, yeah.
2/3 of the vote is still out. Biden was winning stuff counted by 15 points. Whereas if you look at the counties that have counted more than 90% of their vote are all central PA in the T Trump counties.
Right. So Trump's getting all his votes. Trump's getting all his PA votes now.
Yeah, exactly what we thought was going to happen.
Right.
And there's a ton. I mean, there's hundreds of thousands of votes in Philly. There's basically everyone. Democrats looking at the numbers say, okay, well, there's the stuff that we banked before this. We had like a 1 million vote lead in registered Democrats voting. When that stuff's counted, clearly Biden has a majority. And the exit polls, which are adjusted over the course of the day, these are actually, the voters who mailed in stuff, voters who turned up. In the 3 key Midwestern states, Biden is doing 3 to 5 points better with white voters than Hillary Clinton, and not any worse than anyone else. I mean, do the math. 3 to 5 points better with white voters. If that holds up, then he wins those states.